Lobby. That's the nothing personal word of the day. It is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026, and I am joyous today because today's episode is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Lobby. I don't mean the bottom floor of an apartment building that is under 2 feet of snow in New York City. I don't mean what it is when you hire people in Washington, D.C. to go into politicians' offices and say, "Excuse me, may I please have," and then a list of things that you want. I'm talking about walking in to the commissioner's office and knocking on Mike Hill's door, the general manager of Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, and saying, "Scusi, my name is Tarik Skubal, and I would very much like to go to the final game in Miami if Team USA is playing." That is a quote from Tarik Skubal. If they, the World Baseball Classic USA team, go to the finals, I think I'm going to try and lobby to just go watch and be with the guys. Well, I'm happy to get you a clubhouse pass. I'm happy to get you in touch with ticket sales. But Tarik Skubal, is he part of Team USA? There was a big announcement during the offseason, right around the time that Skubal asked for $32 million from the Detroit Tigers in his final year of arbitration eligibility, his final year before becoming a free agent. "I'd like $32 million. The Tigers said, "Yeah, I'd like to give you 19. Major League Baseball said, "Hey, I think 19 sounds about right." They went to arbitration, and Tarik Skubal will be making $32 million. Not a side note, his agent is Scott Boras. Not a side note, Tarik Skubal is not signed to a long-term contract. He is going to be a free agent. When approached by Michael Hill and Major League Baseball to be on Team USA, the answer was yes. There was celebrate good times. Kool and the Gang comes out. Everyone is singing, dancing, and happy. And then we get word yesterday, hold on one second. Tarik Skubal will be a pitching. Let's edit that out. 4869. Tarik Skubal will be pitching in pool play one time for a shortened outing against Jazz and Great Britain. And that's it. Then he's going back to Lakeland and Tigers camp. You'd think that I would be upset with Skubal's decision to pretend that he's on the team. Well, he is on the team. He's going to pitch a shortened outing, like a stub outing, like a spring training game, maybe 3 IPs. Maybe he'll use his new sweeper like Sandy and have someone hit a home run off him. Or maybe he'll pitch 3 shutties, and then that's it. Disappearing back to camp to get ready for the season where the Tigers are favored to win the American League Central, according to our friends at DraftKings, and Skubal is dancing for his dinner. For me, as president of the Detroit Tigers, I would have zero interest in my pitcher pitching for the World Baseball Classic if my pitcher were named Tarik Skubal and I was favored to win the division. However, if I know I'm not signing Skubal, I'm going to pitch him till his arm falls off. I'm going to let him go in the WBC. I'm going to let him ramp up, pitch in high leverage situations, tense games, important games. I'm okay with it because he's going to hold on for 1 year and then be someone else's problem if he's got an issue with his arm going forward. It sounds incredibly upsetting to treat a player like chattel, and I don't mean for it to sound that way. But pragmatically speaking, if my budget or my decision is that I am going to sign him long term, I do not want to do anything to damage him. The World Baseball Classic has struggled finding out when it should be. It's been in March since its inception. For hitters, it's no problem. For pitchers who celebrate after wins, it can be a problem. But mostly, the concern of owners is that for pitchers who are pitching as though it's regular season, as though it's playoffs, as though it's even bigger than playoffs, see the Olympics, see the World Baseball Classic, see the World Cup, when you've got your country on the front of your jersey, it's a different type of adrenaline. It's a different type of preparation and execution. The increment between a spring training game in Florida versus a World Baseball Classic game, there is no argument that baseball can make, and they try, that it does not feel different to a pitcher and that there is not a different reaction to a pitcher's body. It is true that we did studies. The studies did not show a direct correlation between World Baseball Classic pitching appearances and post-World Baseball Classic injuries. It's one of those things where it feels like it could happen, but statistically it doesn't happen, but it doesn't change your gut visceral instinct to not wanting to feel the possibility that it could happen. So I'm not blaming Skubal or Scott Boras for not wanting Skubal to pitch in a major World Baseball Classic game like the quarters, the semis, or the finals. What I am saying is that if there's going to be the benefit of the excitement of the announcement, I don't want to hear about it today. I don't want to hear way after the fact that it's a pool appearance, one and done, and then you're leaving the team. But you're going to lobby Mike Hill and the commissioner so you can be in the dugout for the finals and be there to cheer on your teammates. It's a very interesting question, to me at least. If you make one appearance and pitch a couple of innings in a pool game, are you then a member of the team? I ask this now without an answer, which is a total violation of a live show, Coca. In hockey, in the Olympics, you can dress 20 guys. I learned that by listening to Kenny Albert, where it's 18 in the National Hockey League for a game. But every game, there are people who don't dress. Are those people on the bench? Or are they in the locker room? Or are they in the stands in civilian skivvies? I would assume that if you're not one of 20 in the gold medal game against Canada, you're not sitting there with your stick. So it actually would be interesting. Sidney Crosby for Canada would be the comp who I can think of did not dress for Canada in the final game, even as captain. I would assume he's not on the bench. I assume he's in a suite. I cannot imagine that baseball would be interested in a injured list player being in the dugout. We would at home on occasion have certain players on the IL be allowed to dress in the dugout, but it was very rare. The majority of players who were not on our active roster were either at our spring training site rehabbing, at home rehabbing, or they'd come to batting practice, they'd come for pregame activities, and then they would dress and leave prior to the game. It would not be common. I am certainly interested to how this ends with Tarik Skubal, but it is interesting that he said, I'm trying to do both things. I'm trying to pitch for Team USA, but I understand the need to be here with these guys and get ready for the season, talking about the Tigers. I think it's kind of the best of both worlds in that aspect, and I'm grateful they took me in that capacity. It's not exactly how it happened, but we will let it be. Tarik Skubal is not in the news just for his one appearance against Great Britain. He was also in the news because Tarik Skubal is part of a group of influential players I'm not going to say he's the next Max Scherzer because nobody currently active is the next Max Scherzer as it relates to being a total turd disturber in collective bargaining talks. But Tarik Skubal is certainly involved. His agent is certainly involved. And he decided that it was the right time, certainly in conjunction with his agent and the union, to speak to the Detroit Free Press and the writer Evan Petzold and comment on Bruce Meyer. Now, as part of subcommittees, as part of the leadership, it is critical to have the right PR. We've gone over that before. But what I was interested in is Tarik Skubal's comments that he had, quote, a ton of faith in Bruce Meyer to negotiate with MLB in the upcoming labor talks. I would assume that Skubal knows that Bruce Meyer is the one who negotiated the previous CBA. I would assume that Skubal understands that inside the room, the dynamic that is now changed is that there is no one outside the room above the person inside the room, and that is a terrible dynamic for labor negotiations. Dan Hallam has Rob Manfred. Bruce Meyer has Bruce Meyer. He then talked about the fact that and this is Skubal, a quote, what I've experienced in years past, Bruce Meyer's going to do the best he can to get us the best deal possible. And as a player, that's all you can really ask for. We're confident in him. I want to explain as a management why that quote puts tears in my eye, because that leads me to believe that I need to hunker down in all of my positions and not blink ever. Because if the threshold is getting the best deal possible, that means you're not willing to go all the way. And if you're not willing to go all the way in labor negotiations, then it is highly unlikely that you are going to prevail. You have to be willing to blow the whole thing up. You have to be willing to sacrifice for yourself in order to benefit your future self. You have to have reckless disregard toward your current status, toward your year, toward your salary. This is a critical year for Tarik Skubal in one respect, and not so critical in another respect. If you are a GM of any team, and there is no baseball in 27, and Tarik Skubal is granted his free agency because as a settlement, players are given the year of service even though there was no year of play. Remember, there's two scenarios. One scenario is that if there's no season, then players are stuck, and that it's as though the year never existed, which means Skubal would then be a year older and have a full year left with the Tigers until he'd become a free agent. That's one option. Option number two is that the year happens without baseball, but it's as though the players played that year, and so they get the year of service time, so they advance in whatever class they're in. So Skubal, without playing, would then be a free agent. When you are in the market as a free agent, you are looked at, what is your platform year? What is your injury status? What is your career bulk? What is your projection? Tarik Skubal is one of the few players out there where not playing for a year, I could argue persuasively, would benefit him. And there are not a lot of players like it. Why do I say it? How can Skubal be better than what he was last year? Don't say to me, well, David, he could win his third straight Cy Young. That's true. and he's likely favored to win his third straight Cy Young. But a whole lot of stuff happens during the course of a season. A few bad starts, a little tweak, a little pain, a little loose body. Anything that results in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. When a pitcher is a pending free agent, what should be 2 weeks, you can do a 2 to 3x for what that pitcher will miss because his agent will say you are not taking the mound until you are so healthy that it's as though you didn't have an injury to start with. If you would normally miss 2 weeks, you'd miss 4 weeks, maybe even 6 weeks. So I like the odds of Tarik Skubal not winning the Cy Young because that would seem to me to be the better bet. He will still command top dollar as a free agent if he doesn't win the Cy Young. If he's injured, like Tommy John or like shoulder labrum tear, and I'm certainly not voodoo dolling Tarik Skubal. He is so good for our game. He is such a good player, and I want him to shine this year. But we've learned that every time you want a player or pitcher to shine, something happens. It is the Ohtanis of the world. There are only one Ohtani. The Ohtani, the Judge. It's simply rare. So when Skubal comes out and talks this way, I understand exactly what his motivation was, why he would be asked to say the things he said, and what the impact will be of the things he said. Because there will be an impact in two rooms. The negotiating room against the commissioner for collective bargaining and the free agent room where teams are talking about what they want to offer Skubal as a free agent. You're going to hear more from him, I assure you, Coca. I watched a video yesterday. It was a video of the celebration in the men's Olympic team locker room. It was a video of the FBI director celebrating. We covered that yesterday. What I didn't think about was the phone call that came from President Trump, and I didn't focus on the invitation to tonight's State of the Union. Show of hands, who's going to watch the State of the Union? I never really needed the State of the Union to know the state of our union. Will it be interesting to see who's there, who's seated? I assume there is a market right now, a prediction market, Coca. There has to be. I wouldn't ask you to look as our solo Jenga producer. But my guess is there is a market for over, under, or just how long the State of the Union speech will be tonight. The president said it's going to be long because there's a lot to talk about. And we know there's nothing better for him than hearing his own voice. So I would assume, Coca, that the market for the State of the Union should be 90 minutes. If anyone in the chat, if you're live, Nothing Personal with David Samson, thank you. Subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching on the DraftKings Network, thank you. If you're listening to this, then you're missing today's outfit. But I'd like to know what that market is. So I'm going back inside that clubhouse, and I'm thinking about the invitation that the men got to the State of the Union and their acceptance of it, and how the women's invitation was an afterthought and how it was basically made fun of when the leader is 90 minutes or more. Thank you, Coca. So I have the exact right over-under. Think about that as a State of the Union, 90 minutes. My guess is he got 2 hours of network time for this State of the Union, so we'll wait to see. But one of the things that's getting a ton of attention is when inviting the men to the State of the Union, it was pointed out, I guess you'll have to invite the women now. And he said something like, yeah, I guess I'll have to invite him or else I'll be, whatever, canceled or shattered, whatever the word was, and the men accepted and the women did not. And I wanted to touch on what it is to accept an invitation to the State of the Union, what it is to accept an invitation to the White House, period. You can have a very binary view of an administration. You can be extremely against policies of an administration. You can be against some policies. You can be mostly neutral. You can be sort of in favor, or you can be an absolute Kool-Aid drinker for the policies that which the executive branch is proffering. The whole scale exists. There's disinterest, there's uninterest. Being invited to the White House as a guest of the president for a presentation of a jersey and to celebrate a championship, that is in one area. To be invited by the president to attend his State of the Union is an entirely different area. I believe that no matter your issue with the president, when you win a championship, the tradition is you go to the White House because that is America honoring your championship in whatever sport it is. It is not you saying that you agree with everything the president says or does. But going to the State of the Union, it is exactly acquiescing to the policies, procedures, and viewpoints of a president. There are people who would say, how can you go to the White House or the State of the Union when the president is accused of being a pedophile, when is being investigated or should be investigated over his ties with Epstein and the island and underage sex workers and trafficking? When the president is so obviously racist and so obviously divisive. The State of the Union will not be a speech to bring coalitions together. It will not be a speech to raise America to greater heights. You know in advance that a State of the Union is an appeal to your base to continue to buttress your beliefs and to continue to blindly support your interests. That is not what a uniform exchange is. That is not what a photo op is, which is just off camera of me standing 3 feet from President Bush after the Marlins won the World Series when I didn't agree with everything President Bush did or said, not even close. As a matter of fact, half our team did not. But when you are there as a World Series champion, you have pride not to be necessarily next to the president. The pride is to be as a representative of your country in the White House. The USA Hockey spokesperson who had to comment on the women declining the invitation had to do it in a very unique way because of the current status of our president. We are sincerely grateful for the invitation extended to our gold medal winning U.S. women's hockey team and deeply appreciate the recognition of their extraordinary achievement. Due to the timing and previously scheduled academic and professional commitments following the games, the athletes are unable to participate. Horse hockey. That statement is not telling you the truth. Because if a group of people from Alaska Airlines and Flavor Flav get together and say, hey, you want to party in Vegas, And all of a sudden, the entire women's team does not have professional commitments or previously scheduled academic conflicts, then you know there would have been the ability to go to D.C. in a prearranged private flight by Kash Patel, who said, don't worry, I got you covered. If you do not want to go to the State of the Union, and I absolutely understand, if not agree completely, that said, you have to say it. When you are platformed in that way, it is critical. Why would USA Hockey not want to be honest with you about the reason the women are not going? Do you think it has anything to do with federal financing? Do you think it has anything to do with what we talked about yesterday or last week, where it is a unique situation for CEOs, for organizations, as they are dealing with this presidency, to figure out what it actually means to cross him, what it is to be on his S list, and what real world impact would it have on your balance sheet and statement of operations? There is, I don't know, Coca, how few organizations would choose the right thing versus the bottom line. This is not a moral quandary. This is not me being cynical. This is me being pragmatic. USA Hockey would never go public and say, why would the women accept an invitation from the president that was done after the fact in a mocking tone when everyone was laughing at the reality that we could be equal to men? Why can't you say that? How are we going to change this? I don't want to be the one who presents an issue without a change. I've got the change, and it's a really easy fix to a lot of the issues we're having when it comes to Twitter, when it comes to True Social, when it comes to TikTok, when it comes to States of the Union, when it comes to talking points or interviews with non-political reporters and podcasts. I've got the solution. There are fact checkers who are not partisan. They're called nonpartisan fact checkers. Those are people who listen to what politicians say at every level, from city council up to the presidency. And they tell the voting public whether the candidate is being forthcoming in his comments or her comments or their comments, or whether he, she, or they are being manipulative and not truthful. My solution is that we have full-time fact checkers at all levels of government, where it doesn't matter if you're on the right or the left. These are nonpartisan people who will tell us exactly what is happening at the executive branch, so that when there is an election, you have the ability to either affirm or deny what is taking place. I am a believer in democracy above all. If you vote for Trump, or if you vote against Trump, all I'm asking is that you know why. Because Trump himself is not doing anything differently than he said he would do. And that's all you can ask for a politician. We'll watch the State of the Union, maybe. So you want to talk to Samson is something that we do. I want to explain our cadence a little bit. We have a show today. There'll be a show tomorrow. Coca is going to do the second hour tomorrow. There's not going to be a So You Want to Talk to Samson, because there's no show Thursday or Friday, because I am traveling out of the country and will not be available. I do want to tell you about So You Want to Talk to Samson because I want to keep those voicemails coming. We have an open line of communication, and it's a funny one. Just dial the number on your screen. For audio audience, that's 631-377-4869. You can ask any question you want on any topic you want. Just don't make the voicemail last forever. That is 631-DPS-4869. So You Want to Talk to Samson will be back next week, but tomorrow's show, you are blessed with Jenga. Let's do the review, please, Coca. We are a mere couple weeks away from the Oscars. We will get into BAFTA. We will get into other things that are taking place around the Oscars. But I keep my ballot with me at all times. You would not be shocked to know that I have a ballot, which I'm showing you right now, that I keep and I mark as I've watched all of the movies in all of the categories in order for me to fill out the ballot and try to be perfect, which I've never been, which I will continue to strive for because that is what I do. There is a category of movies that I draw your attention to because for whatever reason, it never gets the attention it deserves, and it is documentary feature films. The Alabama Solution, Come See Me in the Good Light, Calling Through Rocks, Mr. Nobody Against Putin, and The Perfect Neighbor. I've seen 4 of the 5. I can't find the Rocks movie because it's not streaming. And I wanted to review one of them today, and I will get to the others. It's called The Perfect Neighbor. The Perfect Neighbor is a documentary for those of you who love a TV show called Cops. Cops was a TV show. At one point, Coca, it was either Cops or America's Most Wanted that was the longest running TV show in history. I think Simpsons may have the most episodes, or maybe that's the longest running, or it's the longest running animated show for sure. Anyway, I can't exactly keep track. Grey's Anatomy is up there. But Cops is a show where they use the body cams and you're basically seeing what cops are seeing and what they're doing. This is a documentary that is all video from police body cam footage. That is all that is used in this movie. And it is about a neighbor who is not the perfect neighbor. It is about a woman who is unbelievably racist, who could not stand being in a neighborhood with minorities, with diversity. And she was incredibly problematic and required the cops to come to her house on a constant basis. Well, before you know it, there's murder, there's death, there's investigation, there's prison time, there's allegations, there's race relations, there's machinations, and I was doing gyrations as I was watching this, as I was so uncomfortable because not that it was dizzying, because a body cam can be dizzying, it's that the America that we're in, yikes. If that's the America, going back to what we talked about, if that's what we want and what we vote for, we've got it. Congratulations. Spoiler alert, there was a murder. Spoiler alert, she's in prison. I'm going to review a movie that's not nominated for an Oscar tomorrow. And I couldn't be more excited because if you don't like JS, then I don't know what you're doing. I love JS. First name June, last name Squibb, Eleanor the Great. You've never heard of the movie. When I review it, you will have heard of it and you will want to see it. I want to touch on what happened at BAFTA. And this happens in sports. This happens in cities, Boston, Philadelphia, Boston being the worst in terms of racism and in terms of what our players would come into the dugout and say, you would not believe the things that they are saying to me. I think about you every day, Juan Pierre. I think about you, Mike Cameron. I think about players who are supposed to feel safe in their working environment because a professional athlete is just a working environment. And instead, the level of abuse that comes. I am a huge fan of heckling. I am a huge fan of telling a player that he stinks. I'm a huge fan. I am incredibly against swearing while I heckle. I am against being personal while I heckle. And I'm certainly against racism. There was an award show the other night, and it was not a precursor to the Oscars, but every award show says it is. This is in Britain. It is called the BAFTA Awards, but all of the stars of all of the movies, and there is total crossover to the Oscars, they go over the pond and they appear. There was a category that Delroy Lindo, an Oscar nominee, and Michael B. Jordan, an Oscar nominee, were presenting at the BAFTAs. All of a sudden, in the middle of the presentation of their award, you heard the N-word from the crowd. Someone yelling it out. It turns out that person was John Davidson. It turns out that John Davidson is the real-life Tourette's syndrome suffering person about whom a movie was made that was nominated for a BAFTA, and the actor who played John Davidson won Best Actor over Leo, over Wagner Moura, over Timothy Chalamet and Marty Supreme. It has created an unbelievable debate within lunchrooms, social media chat rooms, anywhere you are. What people are wondering is, does Tourette's syndrome, where you yell out things that are unseemly, swears, homophobic remarks and words, racist remarks and words, all around negative things that should always stay unsaid, but don't always. And when you have Tourette's syndrome, you cannot help yourself. The problem is that the debate has now become about the racist nature of BAFTA, where the white host of the awards, after this slur happened, went to the podium and said, I apologize, but there's a person in the audience who cannot control himself. He's got Tourette's syndrome. BAFTA has not done right by Delroy Lindo or Michael B. Jordan or the tens of millions of minorities who are a part of or watched the BAFTAs or a part of the film industry. BAFTA has talked as though it is acceptable what happened. Delroy Lindo said that he wishes BAFTA had spoken to them after because it was so uncomfortable and awful to have the N-word thrown at two black presenters. Do we agree that Tourette's syndrome, can we at least agree that Tourette's syndrome is a legitimate disease which causes people to say things that they may or may not mean and that they know are harmful and wrong? Are we willing to at least acknowledge that? Because the way the debate is being framed is that we can't acknowledge that there could be a reason that John Davidson did it. The reality is he's got to be racist because no one would say the N-word if they weren't racist. And the fact about Tourette's is that's exactly what you do. But here's the problem. Why was John Davidson at the BAFTAs to start with? Do not be aghast with my position that there are certain people with certain horrible afflictions who I can feel sorry for, where it is inappropriate for that person to be in certain situations. You know, I'm on the board of Challenged Athletes Foundation, where we give running blades or wheelchairs to athletes who used to be able-bodied in order to continue athletic achievements now that they are not able-bodied. Why is it that someone in a wheelchair cannot play in the NBA? Or someone with cerebral palsy cannot play in the NBA? There are examples everywhere of afflictions that are not the fault of the afflicted, where there is a limitation in terms of their ability to do certain things. I'm limited in the things that I'm able to do, whether it's by opportunity or circumstance or size, things that I cannot control. I can't blame the amusement park operator for not allowing me on the roller coaster when I wasn't as high as Bugs Bunny's carrot. That is not to say that I am not a good person. I did not have one of the attributes required to engage with that activity. Why do I believe it was not okay for someone with Tourette's to be at an award ceremony, even though one of the movies up for the award and even an eventual winner, he was the subject of that movie? It's because whether your show is live or not, you have got to keep John in a comfortable environment where there is immediate understanding of what could happen at any given moment. If BAFTA is going to invite John Davidson to be at the show, they need off the top to have spoken to every presenter about John's presence at the show and what that could mean so that we can script or be ready for a response that wasn't draped in discomfort, that wasn't the bottom level of what has been a volcano of eruptions about whether or not that is racism or not racism, when that fact is not even the point. John Davidson had to release a statement that said, I wanted to thank BAFTA and everyone involved in the awards last night for their support and understanding and inviting me to attend the broadcast. I appreciated the announcement to the auditorium in advance of the recording, warning everyone that my tics are involuntary and are not a reflection of my personal beliefs. Makes it sound as though everybody was prepared the way I said they should be. Makes it sound as though there should not have been an issue when the N-word is used in front of two black presenters. But obviously, that was not the case. Obviously, whatever warning was given, whatever note, whatever announcement was made about involuntary tics, and yes, they are totally involuntary, and yes, it is a tic. John Davidson's statement is how it should have been. The reality was something quite different. Nothing personal pick of the day. Nothing personal pick of the day is presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. The New York Knicks coming off their loss and nothing personal pick of the day victory when the Pistons came into New York after the All-Star break and absolutely outclassed the New York Knicks. They are rebounding tonight as the Knicks are getting 4.5. Yes, that's the same amount the Pistons got when the Pistons won outright against the Knicks. Well, now it's the Knicks' turn. They are getting 4.5 points against the bearded Cleveland Cavaliers, the hot Cleveland Cavaliers, the James Harden energy infused, now we can win the East and go all the way, Sly Fox, Cleveland Cavaliers. It's only a matter of time before the James Harden experiment doesn't work. It's only a matter of time before the Cavaliers get eliminated from the playoffs and that James Harden will be who exactly James Harden is and has been. When I got the Knicks getting 4.5 against the Cavs, yes, sirree, we are taking them. The Nothing Personal Pick of the Day presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Knicks plus 4.5 versus Cavs. Last night we had the Houston Rockets playing the Utah Jazz. We talked about the complicated nature of Kevin Durant's relationship with Houston. We talked about the fact that Houston needed a win, and what better way to get healthy than against the Utah, please, can I get Boozer Jazz? The irony of Utah drafting Boozer is not lost on me. We had the Rockets giving 14.5. They won by 20. It was never in doubt. Their lead was never below 16 after the second quarter ended. We are now 13-14. As I think about, I want to end this hour. We're coming back with another hour. There's so much left to cover. But I wanted to tie a bow on this hour as it relates because I got something in my head about what we started the show with Tarik Skubal. Please do not misunderstand the way I act as a team president and the way I present now as the host of Nothing Personal. As team president, I had no interest in anything other than maximizing the opportunity to win. Whether you think that our payroll was too low and that we weren't trying and that we were Artie Moreno, that's not the truth of it. The truth of it, from ownership on down, is even with limited resources and major annual losses, all of which got made up after a sale that had never been contemplated, our entire theory was players are pieces. I did not humanize the players as much as I could have. I did not care to understand the player's perspective as much as I could have. Instead, I was balls to the wall for maximizing the opportunity to win a game every single day. Tarik Skubal's decision is not unpatriotic. It is not a slight against America or Americans. It is a decision in his self-interest. Self-interest is nothing to sneeze at, hachu. Self-interest is the currency that makes this world go round and has been not for years, not for decades, but for centuries. And far be it from me to insult or in any way impugn self-interest. I won't do it. After the break, we're going to talk some NBA MVP because it's quite a situation with load management. We'll do that right after the break. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. We've got an amazing thing happening in the National Basketball Association where the four best players in the league are at risk of not being recognized as being the best players in the league. It's something that we knew could happen when Adam Silver said, we know how to get a big TV deal. We know how to deal with load management. Let's make sure that everybody plays at least 65 out of 81 games. That number was arrived at, according to Adam Silver, through great analysis, discussion, and guessing. Well, here we are in a season where SGA, Luka, Wemby, and Jokic are the top four odds-on, according to DraftKings, MVP winners, and all four of them are in danger of not playing enough games to actually win the MVP. SGA, if he misses 6 more games, he's done. Luka, 5, Wemby, 4, and Jokic, 1 more. The reason that the NBA is hoping against hope that SGA plays the majority of the remaining games for the Thunder and is eligible for MVP is that they don't want to have to explain why Cade Cunningham is the league MVP. Cade Cunningham is a phenomenal player on a team that could win a title. He's the best player on a title potential championship team. He's not the MVP of the league. He's not the best player in basketball. And it's not relatively close. Cade Cunningham becomes the MVP favorite and the presumptive winner if the people above him do not qualify. And that leaves the NBA in a bit of a quandary. Because years from now, when I go back, and this is true of individual awards and team accomplishments, when people look at Greg Popovich and they count the number of titles the San Antonio Spurs won, they don't say, well, in 1999, Patrick Ewing didn't play for the Knicks when the Spurs won. There are example after example of teams that win against not the best players of the opposing team because of injuries. Do you go back when you think about that team and you see the list of titles they've won? Are you the asterisk person or are you not? When you go back and look at the Steve Nash MVPs or the Bird or the Johnson or the Jordan or the Kobe, do you go back and look at what the vote was? Do you go back and look to see what the seasons were? Or do you simply apply the moniker after the name blank, comma, 2X NBA MVP, comma, will be making a paid appearance at a card show for about $150K. No asterisk. That's the whole point of Barry Bonds and being the home run leader and what Bud Selig wants to believe, which is Hank Aaron is the home run leader. But the reality is that Barry Bonds is the home run leader. Steroids or no steroids, the reality is the reality. If Cade Cunningham wins the MVP, Cade Cunningham is the MVP. But it does not reflect the strength of your league. Anything that you do that calls into question what it is, the service that you're providing. In this case, with the NBA, they're providing stars. If that is called into question, you're doing it wrong. There is a process for being an MVP. There's a process for winning a World Series or an NBA title. There is a degree of difficulty no matter the opponent. Why is it that we cannot count on writers to decide or voters to decide what to take into account as they cast their vote? What would be the problem with voting for SGA as your MVP, even if and when he misses a month of action? Or if he plays only 60 games, which is 75% of a season, an 80-game season. It's 82, but the math is close enough. Why do we have to in any way legislate how we decide who is most valuable? The answer is there is not a scenario under which the NBA should be getting in the way of an MVP vote. There is not one reason I can think of. I called for the reversal of the 65-game threshold on a previous Nothing Personal, and I called for it again as I was looking at DraftKings odds, and I was looking at where Cade Cunningham is, and then I was thinking to myself, wow, there is a serious possibility that this guy is going to win. Great value on the market. Of course, it's possible Jokic won't miss another game. Of course, it's possible SGA will not miss the number of games that he's allowed to miss, 6, for him to no longer qualify. But, well, Coca, let me do a wait to see here, actually. I do have a wait to see about this. Wait to see is when we tell you something's going to happen. If it does, great. If it doesn't, less great, but at least we're going to revisit it. You can go on davidsamsonpodcast.com right now, and you can go to the tracking document and check out every single wait to see. I've got a value proposition for MVP, and it is a risky wait to see, because if Nikola Jokic misses one more game, he cannot be the MVP, rendering my wait to see as a loss. My wait to see is that Jokic will be the MVP of the NBA and that he will play the rest of the games of the Nuggets this season in order to be in position to be named MVP, because you can pretend you want to go home. You can pretend that you like your horses better than your teammates. You can pretend that winning the NBA Finals is simply a day extra of working before you get to go home to your family and your country. I'm good with all of that. I'm also good with the knowledge that Jokic wants to win the MVP. And there is nothing wrong with that desire. So Jokic will play every game. He will be named MVP. That is a wait to see that Cade Cunningham will have to just wait his turn. I've got a WNBA update to go over with you. What's the number one thing that I've mentioned about negotiation with you? Do you know? The number one thing you need to properly negotiate is you need to have an understanding of what the other side wants and what you want. You have to have a path to getting what you want and to understanding what your opponent wants. That's the number one rule of negotiating. What's the number two rule of negotiating? In a landslide, the number two rule is, until such point as leverage can be exerted by one side to the other, or preferably both sides to each other, then a settlement will not take place. The WNBA sent out Adam Silver in his comments at the All-Star Game to discuss the WNBA CBA and explain we are about to be in the 11th hour. Meaning, if you want a season to start on time, we need to settle this now. Code word, you need to give in now. Empty words? Miscalculation of time? Misunderstanding of the strength of the players' union for the WNBA? We'll never know. But what I do know is that Adam Silver created the side of the cliff yesterday. He created the 11th hour yesterday. Adam Silver made it so that the players understand the serious nature of the timing of this agreement, which is why they've got to give in. That's what the NBA wants. That's what the WNBA owners want. Who could blame them? But what Adam Silver did is he put a date next to an agreement. He did it through his minions at the WNBA and through the commissioner and however else you want to say that the NBA is not involved with the WNBA. You're just wrong. WNBA has a deadline now of March 10th. That is only right now 2 weeks away. And the deadline, according to the WNBA management, is that a collective bargaining agreement must be agreed to by that day, or the 2026 schedule will be impacted. This is a source going to ESPN, and I smiled. Do you think that's leverage of any kind? Hey, your season may be impacted. It may be shorter. It may go longer if they do what MLB did at the last CBA, where they started 2 weeks late but then finished 2 weeks late, so it was a totally normal season. If your only leverage is setting a date but assigning that date to impacting the 2026 schedule, you have used an arrow in your quiver that, forget a poisonous tip, it's got a rubber tip. The players in the WNBA have zero interest in a random, self-imposed deadline and the concomitant threats. The WNBA Players Association couldn't be more correct. If you are going to set a deadline for a negotiation, this is how I was taught to set a deadline. You say to a person that if we don't have an agreement by March 10th, the deal that you are pondering for acceptance by March 10th, which may be given to you March 9th, March 8th, March 7th. Maybe we already gave it to you with the housing increases, the minimum increases, but no revenue sharing movement. If you do not accept this deal by that day, every day following, our offer gets worse. I love that strategy. I used it with players all the time. You don't want to agree right now? Your next offer is lower. That is the punishment for not doing things on my time. Yes, I know. I know. The level of selfishness that I exhibited, the level of intensity that I exhibited seems insane now, given what I do for a living and given what's happening to me personally. The fact that I would need to win every single tiny battle as a way to guarantee a winning of the war. The WNBA didn't go far enough. The WNBA should just come out and say, hey, we need a deal right now. Next deal, worse. Deal after that, worse. Deal after that, worse. Just try me. Just try me that I'm not telling you the truth. But then you have to follow through. Because if your child, your partner, your parent, the people with whom you work, the people against whom you negotiate, the agents, if they all believe that you are not sincere when you give a deadline or an ultimatum, you've lost them forever. Is there a scenario where you could conduct a 2-team expansion draft, have free agency where 80% of the women are free agents currently, side note, have training camp, do the college draft, then start the regular season right now scheduled for May 8th? If you think that the players believe that March 10th is the deadline in order to start the season on May 8th, then you've never done a fire drill. You've never had to put on a show, whether it is a nothing personal show or a baseball game or a charity event. You have never felt the feeling unless you know what the punishment is for getting it wrong. I cannot wait for the result of the WNBA and WNBA Players Association and their ongoing negotiation, because both sides have put their feet in the sand and put a stake in the ground on issues where there should be commonality of interest and compromise to get it done. If, in fact, those are the issues, and if, in fact, both sides get to the very end and realize we are one day away from a problem, from Armageddon within our ranks, coming out with a statement right now, not good enough. Not even close. It's not a coincidence, might I add, that the statement of the deadline of March 10th comes out the same day that a report got to ESPN and Katie Barnes originally, that the WNBA and Adam Silver gave money to the players. And that money was because the league had generated a certain amount of revenue sharing, and the previous CBA, 4869, a certain amount of revenue, and the CBA previously outlined if there is X amount of revenue, then you have to share Y amount with the players. That's a huge win for the players. You cannot base it on revenue without taking expenses into account. But if it's negotiated and agreed to, then it is what it is. When the WNBA generated enough revenue this past year to trigger the revenue sharing, the feeling was that that is a sign of industry health. That's a sign of the power of the women's game, Caitlin or no Caitlin. If you are meeting the revenue threshold that seemed out of reach when the CBA was done, side note, when you sign a contract and you say the following statement to yourself, well, that's never going to happen. It's going to happen. You've got to be prepared for the likelihood that something that you have never experienced or wouldn't expect to be necessary to have codified an agreement. Why would we argue about something that has such a small likelihood of taking place? Well, this is it now. The WNBA is doing revenue sharing because they got enough revenue to share, but the clubs and the players, what are they still fighting about? Are they fighting about the categorization of revenue? Are they fighting about the percentage of revenue sharing that they would receive or the percentage of overall revenue? That's what we read, 30%, 36%, 0%, 5, 12. You think it's two more steps and you come down from 30, you come up from 10, and you compromise and you end at 20. Why don't all negotiations end that way? Why can't every negotiation be a run toward the middle and toward common ground? A, our court systems would then be empty and tons of people would be out of jobs because there'd be no reason to sue anybody because there's nothing to calculate. It is a straight, strict formula. When you get into the gray of hiding revenue, reallocating revenue, and a player's bonus is based on whatever you announce as revenue, whatever you announce as audited revenue, to me, you are setting yourself up for argument. And that's exactly what the WNBA had happen to it. The revenue sharing that was given, however a pittance it was used by the players almost immediately as a show of strength of the league. Why can you withhold money from us in percentage of revenue when you've got an overabundance of revenue, so much so that you are sharing it with us according to the rules and regulations? What they didn't mention in the small print is that every player for that time period gets a payment. Some of them really super low if they have very little service time in the previous period that is being measured. But when the WNBPA treasurer says this shows our value and how what we're fighting for makes sense and how we should keep fighting. The treasurer is taking this gift from the owners, where they could have easily arranged it to have the revenues in different pots measured different ways to help cover the significant losses they have incurred. For the treasurer to take that goodwill gesture, which is going to be viewed as not enough by some and too much by others, but to use that as your background to give a quote to say, this shows our value, we should keep fighting. That's not what it shows at all, actually. And you're going to find out the hard way. Coke, have you ever been to a Laker game? Did you ever, when you were in LA? I can't remember whether you have. I don't think you have. It used to be called the Great Western Forum. Now it's in downtown LA at Staples. It's not called Staples. What's it called? What's the area? What's it called? No, the name of the arena. I'm talking about the area in which it is in LA. I want to say it's LA Live, but that is an incorrect word. I'm having a moment right now. It is the area around where that arena is. News came out of LA, where there's always news, that there are going to be significant increases in their season ticket prices. ESPN, according to Dave McMenamin, said that the Lakers will have a steep price hike planned for their tickets for next season. And then said, this is the first sign of new Lakers owner Mark Walter seeking a return on his investment. The Lakers then responded with a statement, we are adjusting season ticket pricing for next season. I love using the word adjust. It covers all sorts of stuff, doesn't it? It doesn't mean it's going up for everyone. We're adjusting. Maybe it'll go down in some places. Maybe up by a lot. They're adjustments. Who doesn't make adjustments? Like when you take a thing that tightens, a bolt, a pliers. Hey, a quick adjustment. The Lakers said the updates reflect the current market landscape and demand. Hold on, I've got a tear in my eye because in LA, they're having great demand because the current landscape is so great. Are we talking about acquiring Luka? Well, there's already been an off season with Luka. Is year 2 post-trade deadline last year so far superior that all of a sudden there is increased demand? I don't know that that's it. Could it be that LeBron James will not be there or will be there for one final year next year? Is there a retirement tour, and will it not be in Cleveland? Will he choose not to leave the house in the location that he loves for him and his production company and play his final season in LA and then walk off into the sunset? When you're an organization and you are setting your ticket prices, it is one of the great injustices that we do to you, the fans, because we set it up a year in advance. not only are we submitting our pricing to baseball, but also we are figuring out our pricing in the middle of the current season for next season. We are projecting what we are going to do for the balance of this season and what we can do to raise the revenue for next season. When you've got contractually obligated revenue, like a naming rights deal, like a corporate sponsor deal, there is nothing that performance, there's some termination for cause languages, but ignore that. There is nothing that can account for performance either on the upside or the downside when you are doing something so far in advance. Then your renewals start later on during the previous season. So we are out there trying to get money from our fans for next season while we're in the middle of either a great season, a good season, a mediocre season, or a crappy season. Whatever it is we're in the middle of, you're getting your season ticket holder renewal pamphlet while that season is taking place. The math that we would do every single year is how much can we raise season ticket prices before too many people decide to say they're done. There are companies that you can hire. There are algorithms that you can follow. There is code you can write that will give you pricing, that will explain to you supply and demand on a section by section, row by row basis. With the way that pricing works, we don't have to do it by section anymore. We have the ability to raise prices and lower prices of seats like an airplane does or like a hotel does. We have the ability to do it that individualized and that dynamically. Why wouldn't we maximize our revenue by making sure that we are following the exact supply-demand curve? We would. But here's what else we would do that the Lakers didn't do. We would make sure that we lowered the prices in enough seats that we could have a smaller season ticket price increase, and then we would announce, because we will have counted the number of seats that are not increasing, and we'd be able to announce, hey, look, while there is an increase in certain areas, overall, we are neutral to down, and overall, there is a value to our season ticket holders that continues to grow year after year. Instead of saying that you are reflecting the current market landscape and the demand, I would far better, the Los Angeles Lakers have said, that we are going to do everything we can to make sure that we are getting the maximum amount of money from those people who attend the games, especially the people without true price pressure. As a salesperson, the lack of price pressure, that's like gold. You want to suck at the teat of no price pressure because that is where the profit is. When you have someone who engages with your product and afterwards says, wow, I would have paid way more for that. Shame on you. The Lakers are not trying to make back Mark Walter's investments in a year's period by increasing season ticket holder prices. They are merely trying to take advantage of the situation that they find themselves in that they may not be in going forward, including next year. This is not brain surgery by any stretch. This is not Mark Walter going to the Lakers and saying, you better make this worth my while because of what I spent on your franchise. Hey, Genie, how high can we go on the ticket prices? It is not that at all. I want to follow up on the Anaheim Angels story of Los Angeles. We covered yesterday that Artie Moreno may or may not have seen a survey that may or may not have said, hey, winning is not even in the top 5. Go listen to yesterday's Nothing Personal, February 23rd, 2026, episode 1417. We're now at 1418 on February 24th. And I've got a quick follow for you because you would not believe it. Yes, you would. Who am I kidding? You wouldn't not believe it. 2 negatives for the price of 0. The Angels players are unhappy that Artie Moreno does not push to win. It took all of under a day for the players to react and for the media, however meager the media, local media show up is these days. It took a hot New York second for the players to say, well, that's unacceptable. That's stinky. We go out there busting our keisters every day trying to win. It's hard to imagine working for an owner who doesn't want to win. Do you know the players who want the payroll to go up? Do you think that's current teammates? Do you think that's players around the league? Maybe. Let me tell you who it's not. It's not your minimum players on your current team. Just think about this. If you are playing for a team and you have a spot on that roster because the team is young, the team is cheap, the team has a low payroll, the team is not trying to win, the team is tanking, whatever the case may be, you've got a spot on that team. You are making league minimum salary, which is more than you could make anywhere else. When we had players be upset with us, I can't believe the payroll is not higher. You know who never complained? The people at the bottom of the pay scale. Because if you take on another player to replace Shohei or a hugely expensive player, because all of a sudden under the theory, hey, I want to win. I don't want to miss an opportunity with Trout, whatever. You're not going to get unanimity in a clubhouse on any issue, certainly not a financial issue. And for those who think that the Angels and their players have some sort of wall that they've put up around them and some sort of intestinal fortitude to question their owner, to question their owner's desire to win, remember, like 8 to 10 guys on that team, like any team, are minimum players. And if they get replaced by a higher salaried player, they lose their roster spot. They lose their professional pay. Why doesn't anyone talk about that? Why doesn't anyone feel that players will also act in their self-interest? It is absolutely shocking to me beyond comprehension that there would be an end of the bench player who would be in favor of the team doing anything other than exactly what it's doing so that he can be an end of the bench player. From a player's perspective, if you know that your owner is tanking or not winning, you are looking inside your bubble. You are acting in your self-interest to protect your career. Players' perspectives on issues like this are so different. They vary according to service time. They vary according to earnings, career earnings, annual earnings. One of the great ways to break up this union is the old D&C. D&C means to divide and conquer. When you can divide players based on their socioeconomic status in the game, and you can keep them on one side and keep the top of the market Boras guys on the other, you got yourself a successful clubhouse. I can't say that I'm surprised in any way, shape, or form that the players are upset by this. I can certainly tell you they're not the least bit surprised. I also want to follow up on one of our faves, the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm an NL East guy. They're not one of my faves. I root for everyone to lose in the NL East except the Marlins. I always have. I took a few years off, but that's who I am. I like following them. They play in a division that has Coca's Mets in them, that has Terry McGurk's Braves in them, and John Middleton and Dave Dombrowski's Phillies in them. This division is complicated by the fact that you have multiple teams who are spending money in increasingly irresponsible ways. The Phillies this year have a projected payroll of $317 million. And this year will be the 5th year in a row that the club has gone into the luxury tax territory. 5 years. It'll be the 2nd year in a row that they've cleared the highest threshold. What has their return on their investment been exactly? What is it that makes them continue to have the depth that they have, but not have the results that they want or need? If I knew that I was running a club that was constantly over the tax threshold, I would be asking the owner whether he is of sound mind or not. The punitive nature of being over the apron is so significant. The juice is not nearly worth the squeeze. There is nothing the Phillies can do this year that they could not have done last year, except the roster definitionally got more expensive. You can have the same players for the most part and end up paying a totally different amount in both payroll and tax. What I keep wondering about, and that Scott Lauber in the Philadelphia Inquirer wrote about, when you are John Middleton and you have wanted nothing more than to win a World Series and you haven't won one in your tenure, period, hard stop. What do you do? What do you do when you know that your spending is not sustainable? In your own life, what do you do? When your expenses are such that you're buying so much stuff on Amazon or you're doing whatever it is you're doing, what do you do eventually? Don't you eventually just stop because you run out of money? To me, it is incredibly unlikely that the Phillies continue this streak of being above the tax threshold. This is the last season that these Phillies will continue to be together and, quote, run it back for the most part as they attempt to get to and win the World Series. The Phillies are going to have to lower their payroll and put it in line with revenues, but not this year. Because when we talk to you about owners who are looking ahead to labor unrest and saying, hey, right now, why not us? Why not now? I was talking about John Middleton, who is doing that very thing as we speak. Will it matter? Do you know that the way baseball is going to end up, I was thinking about the new CBA, Coca. Whether there's a salary cap or a salary floor, and I don't agree there will be. I don't believe that the owners have the intestinal fortitude to actually mean that that's what they want and then go get it. We're going to have a world in an uncapped league where the Mets and Dodgers will be so far out in front of the other 28 teams that you will need a mirror that says objects in this mirror are further away than they appear, because they're going to separate themselves like the lem on a space launch. But what I always said to the commissioner's office and what I always talked about with other executives, there's only 26 roster spots. The most they can do is have no minimum players, which no team does, and just overpay 26 different times. That's the limit. That's all they can have. The Dodgers, same. That's 52 players not on your list, not eligible to be part of your team. So what? Will the Phillies ever be in the Mets or Dodgers territory? No, they never will be, no matter what, when Citizens Bank is redone, or no matter whether a casino is done in the Sports Authority area in Philadelphia where all of the teams play. There is no scenario where Philadelphia, the city, can withstand and keep up with Mets and Dodgers. Does it sound familiar to you? Does it ring the San Diego Padres bell in your mind when I've said to you the Padres can never be the Dodgers, no matter how much they try, who they sign, how irresponsible their payroll is? They cannot be the Dodgers. You have got to stop pretending you are something that you are not. When you look at what MLB's projected tax payroll is this year, it tells a story worth telling. There are no teams over 270 million except 5. 5 out of 30 teams are over 270. The Dodgers at an unbelievable 508 is the highest tax payroll estimated to be this year. The Mets are 27 million behind at 491. The Yankees are 20 behind at 82 behind at 399. And then you've got the Phillies at 360 and the Blue Jays at 326. Those are the payroll estimates for the top 5 teams. Not a coincidence. Those are the top 5 teams who are odds on to go the furthest in October. There's the least value in a futures bets on these 5 teams because the expectation is they will not lose a game. Forget 4 out of 7 or 3 out of 5. Or God forbid, 2 out of 3. Can't all be right, though. If there is one more year of Phillies losing, they will fall out of this top 5 list so fast that your head will spin like it's an alive form of lice in Harper's beard. I don't get, Coca, at all, the franchise tag situation in football. I've spoken about it before, certain players being given the franchise tag. It's that time of year between now and March when you can give a player a franchise tag, which means you thought you were a free agent. Just kidding. We want you back. We will pay you this salary according to position as is set out in the CBA. See you later. It's funny to choose that for a player because teams should want more franchise tags. It is a huge advantage to be able to keep one of your players for an extra year. The problem is that there's a bunch of players who don't agree. There's a bunch of players who got tagged, who then decided off-season workouts, forget it. Preseason, spring training, pads, no pads, strings, whatever it is you like or you use, not worth it. Not doing it. Word came out yesterday that the Dallas Cowboys are planning to franchise their wide receiver Pickens, which would lead to a $28 million one-year deal approximately. But don't forget, the Cowboys are in a bit of a bind because every year there's a guy. Sometimes you trade him like Micah Parsons. Sometimes you sign him like CD Lamb and Dak Prescott. I don't know how many times that I can remind people that when your front office personnel tells you that this is the guy, you've got to remind him, her, them that every year there is a new the guy. When you sign these long-term deals with players in football, why don't we cover the dead cap money that is going to impact the teams when they release the player not even close to the end of that contract that drew him to your team in the first place? Why are we not discussing that? All the people are discussing is the fact that Pickens deserves and ought to get a long-term deal. In a capped league, how does that work? Where do you stop? I think we learned from last season it's way more important to have a kicker than it is to have a wide receiver. Now, funny enough, the Cowboys kicker is also a free agent, but of the restricted kind. That means a whole different set of rules apply to the kicker in terms of when he signs, what he signs for, how he can be compared to other kickers, etc. What he gets in the open market as an unrestricted free agent, and he can bring that back to his team because his team has the right to match that because he's a restricted free agent. It's a concept that baseball has tried. It's a concept that football is trying. Baseball, certainly not. But when you have the right to match, players ought not give that up in a CBA. They ought not allow their team to shop them around to see what they can get in the marketplace. It is never a good idea to shop a player in that way because by definition, you will be getting him at basement level returns. When you are applying a franchise tag in the NFL and that player goes AWOL either mentally or physically, do you think for one hot second that you are extracting the value that you would have gotten had you traded him during the offseason? There can't be a way that Jerry Jones does not, as GM and owner, does not have the ability to understand that applying franchise tags willy-nilly is not beneficial to your franchise. I'm not sure how that ends, Coca. I don't think Pickens is going to sign a long-term deal with the Cowboys. I think they'll give Aubrey the money because the guy doesn't miss from beyond 50 yards, and he takes the most field goals of any guy on any team from those sort of distances, and he makes them like it's a chip shot. I think that what you have to do is make the hard decision where you've got to choose a player. You've got to choose who you're going with. And then it automatically means that you can't sign the next guy because even in a salary cap or non-salary cap world, you can't have everyone or everything, even the Dodgers or the Mets. But now what the Cowboys have is their typical off-season distraction, fight with the player that leads to a bad outcome for the player and then another bad season for the team. How is it that we keep that's $1, keep repeating the same mistakes time after time? Instead, what Jerry Jones should have done is stepped in as owner and looked right at Pickens and said, listen, you're not getting extended. Why? Because it's just business. We went with Lamb. This is nothing personal.